Directly with the short introduction speech by the President and then by the rapporteur. President, you have the floor.
Thank you and good morning everyone. C'est un plaisir particulier pour moi.
I'm particularly pleased to welcome you to the Council today. Tomorrow we'll be able to have discussions within the European Council, but I wanted to thank you for preparing your report. The Belgian presidency asked you to do that together with the European Council in close conjunction with the European Commission as well. So thank you for the huge amounts of work that you've already put in and the quality of that report. So I know just how much work in terms of hours put in, meetings with various stakeholders, for you to be able to produce such a good report.
On my side, we feel, we understand, all of us, that we are facing huge and very difficult challenges. We know that we need to tackle this climate challenge. We need to address this digital revolution of our societies. We need to invest more in defense and security. And on top, we know that we face a demographic challenge across the European Union. And we know that the single market is a fundamental asset, this is a fundamental tool, and because of the single market, thanks to the single market, we have been making a lot of progress over the last decades in terms of building a more prosperous European Union with positive consequences for our citizens all across the EU and with the possibilities for our member states to build strong social models for the benefits of our citizens. At the same time, we need to be lucid and we need to make a clear and lucid assessment of what we face, what is the state of play and what we should do in the future. And the numbers are the numbers. We know that there is a growing gap in terms of innovation, in terms of investment, if we compare with our partners and with our competitors across the world. We can see that our partners, our competitors, they put in place some policies with subsidies, with state-owned companies, with tariffs, with barriers. We can see what is the state of play and what are the decisions made outside of the EU. And that's why, dear Enrico Letta, your report is fundamental because this is a very inspiring tool to help us in the European Council to provide the firm guidance that will be needed in the months and in the years to come. And there is a unique window of opportunity. Why? Because this week we have a special European Council dedicated on Thursday to this question of the competitiveness deal we want to build for the future of the EU. But it's another reason in terms of window of opportunity. We are working very hard with all the colleagues in the European Council on a strategic agenda. In this strategic agenda, we have the purpose to agree on this strategic document by the summer, probably in June. This is at least my purpose. You know, this is not a secret that we are working very hard, including using some unusual tool, small meetings in small formats, with more interactivity, more possibilities for spontaneous and candid exchange of views to build what I am calling the collective intelligence of the European Council and the European Union. Ça signifie qu'il y a quelques points clés que je...
That means that there are a few key points that need to be retained. One, a point that is made very clear in Enrico Letta's report, that we need to work on three key pillars which deliberately hadn't been taken into consideration when Jacques Delors launched the single market for political reasons at the time. There were political reasons why these three sectors hadn't been taken on board. Energy, and we talked a lot about that in recent years, following the energy attack launched by Russia against Europe and the war of aggression against Ukraine by Russia. Telecommunications and the financial markets. Now, these three issues, particularly the last one, brings us to the question of investment.
Debate, a very respectful debate around the table of the European Council. The financial solidarity, what does it mean? Public money, state aid, financial sector, what does it mean? What is the right balance? And I see, in fact, 5 points, 5 topics that we need to address in the weeks and the months to come, and I'm certain, dear Enrico Letta, that your report will be useful to help us to converge and to build political decision all together. Premier point, c'est l'union.
First point, the Capital Market Union will have a lengthy debate on Thursday in the European Council. It's a difficult subject in the preparatory stages. We've seen that there are sensitivities that will have to be respected, but we hope to be able to make some headway. The capital markets is one way of promoting private investment in the real economy to help citizens, more good jobs, more investment. Secondly, state aid. There's a question as to how we can make sure these state aid are targeted so that we have an effective leverage effect without fragmenting the single market. Thirdly, the role of the EIB, the member state bank, if you like, the most important bank in terms of multilateral development. It has a very important leverage effect, and so we have to have a discussion on the recapitalization of the EIB. And then there's a discussion on joint debt or joint financing. There are intellectual arguments on both sides of the argument. We don't have an agreement on this yet, but if we can't move forward, because it's not just a question of scale.
Yeah, this is not the only purpose. It's very important. It's not enough. It's also very important to show that we have respect for our territories all across the EU, and the SMEs. They have a fundamental role to play. There is no doubt on that question, and it was very important in this report to see this balance. In a nutshell, thank you. My gratitude, Enrico. Really great to work with you and to cooperate with you. And I'm very confident that the debate we'll have tomorrow in the European Council will be helpful, constructive, and thank you for that. Merci beaucoup. Grazie.
Prego. Un grand merci. Je suis évidemment.
Thank you very much. I'm obviously very moved, very emotional to be here, to be back in the European Council 10 years after I was last there. And I'm very pleased to have this opportunity to exchange with the Prime Ministers, heads of state and government tomorrow. I would like to very warmly thank the President of the European Council, Michel, for all your support. Your support has been very important ever since the beginning for this initiative to be successful, and I will also need your support in the hours to come, because the discussion is now entering a point where it is on the table of the European Council, along with very sensitive and very important issues. And I hope that my report will help. Of course, I fully respect the Council, the heads of state and government tomorrow. I will be speaking to them tomorrow on the topics covered in my report. And I just wanted to vehemently highlight the fact that this was a bottom-up approach, a collective success. 400 meetings took place across all countries of the European Union across 8 months, thousands of discussions and meetings that were extremely interesting for me and crucial to understanding what's going on, and in order to collect ideas on how to move things forward on some of the difficult topics that President Charles Michel has just mentioned. Now, on top of this, I must mention that the three topics, energy, telecoms and financial markets, which were at the heart of my reflections from the very beginning, are three topics which will have an immediate impact on the European agenda and on the strategic agenda, to which a lot of expectation is attached for 2024. And the greatest impact possibly is linked to the integration of the single market to the financial markets, which could be a game changer in a discussion that we've now been having for the last decade. I was there when this discussion started, and it's a very difficult discussion, a very difficult debate. How can we ensure that the European financial market is integrated and attractive, and that it 300 billion euros, according to the figures of the European Central Bank, go to the US and to other places that are deemed to be more favourable, with consequences that we're all aware of. So we have a clear goal, and that is mentioned in the report, in the text, and the heart of the report looks at how we can ensure that the integration of the single market become a game changer in this important topic, which is how to mobilize the savings of Europeans and look at the very important topic of ensuring that the transition put in place an IRA. We Europeans are also capable of putting a toolbox in place together.
Trying to react to the problems that we are having today, and the main problems are related to how to finance the transition, how to be able on the three topics of the
reports focus and concern for SMEs, because it's not just a question of scale.
Yeah, this is not the only purpose. It's very important. It's not enough. It's also very important to show that we have respect for our territories all across the EU, and the SMEs. They have a fundamental role to play. There is no doubt on the question, and it was very important in this report to see this balance. In a nutshell, thank you. My gratitude, Enrico. Really great to work with you and to cooperate with you. And I'm very confident that the debate we'll have tomorrow in the European Council will be helpful, constructive, and thank you for that. Merci beaucoup. Grazie.
Prego. Un grand merci. Je suis évidemment.
Thank you very much. I'm obviously very moved, very emotional to be here, to be back in the European Council 10 years after I was last there. And I'm very pleased to have this opportunity to exchange with the Prime Ministers, heads of state and government. Tomorrow.
Of the single market, because we know very well that the single market is beloved by big enterprises, by big companies. There are too many SMEs that are taking advantage, that are exploiting all the advantages of the big dimension of the single market. Why? Because the single market in reality is very fragmented, is too fragmented on many aspects, like I don't know, the business law or the taxation system. The fragmentation is a big obstacle for an SME. So in the report, you will find a big chapter on SMEs' role, trying to underline the importance of the single market for all of them. Je termine en...
And I'd like to close by very warmly thanking the Belgian presidency. This was obviously an idea launched by the Belgian and Spanish presidencies, as well as by the European Commission. So I'd like to take this opportunity to personally thank Alexander De Croo, Pedro Sanchez and Ursula von der Leyen for giving me this opportunity. It's been an extraordinary opportunity for me, and as you'll see in the text, which is being circulated, this report is dedicated to the memory of Jacques Delors, because the Europe we have today, with all the opportunities for all European citizens, that Europe is due to Jacques Delors' vision, who was able to bring together competition, competitiveness, solidarity and cooperation, the three big ideas behind the single market. So I'd also like to thank all the researchers at the Delors Institute and the Delors Network between Paris, Brussels and Berlin, a network led by Pascal Lamy, a personal friend of mine and intellectual inspiration. It's a collective exercise that we've carried out, and the fruit of which will be discussed tomorrow with the heads of state and government. And I had a very interesting discussion for 2 hours with the commissioners, and was very fortunate to meet all heads of state and government in all the different countries. It's been a very important experience for me, and really highlighted the diversity in Europe. And perhaps just a final thought on an experience I had. When I started on this journey with the aim of visiting all member states, I immediately thought it's a small continent, this continent of ours, and it's a continent, this continent of ours, that has decided to go green. So of course I should take the train. And I realized that it's impossible to go by high-speed train from one European capital to another and to cover all of them. It's not possible, except for on those axes that we're all familiar with, Brussels, Paris, Amsterdam. But there are no other high-speed trains connecting all of the European capitals. And this is a sort of personal experience that we all share, but it's an element, I think, that highlights the limits that we're experiencing in Europe today. And it's a huge obstacle, because high-speed trains exist, they work very well, but only within a country. You can easily travel from Barcelona to Madrid, or from Aix-en-Provence to Paris, or from Salerno to Turin by high-speed train. It works very well, but when we're trying to link up the capital cities in different countries, that's where we run into difficulties, and that's where the single market comes in, linking our countries together and ensuring that we can cross borders. I just wanted to highlight that because I found it completely absurd that I had to travel between European capitals by plane and could not take a high-speed train as I would have liked. And I wanted to highlight this because one of the proposals in the report is that we come up in the next years with a plan to ensure that all European capitals are connected by train. And it's, of course, going to be hard to connect Valletta with Dublin, say, by train, but when it comes to the other capital cities, I think we can achieve something, and that's a vision for the future, a very concrete vision for the future that I wanted to put on the table based on my personal experience.
Thank you, President. We'll take a few questions from the audience. We'll start with Jorge.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Jorge Valero with Bloomberg. Two questions. First for Mr. Letta. Of those ideas that you included in your report that you consider bolder, which ones you consider more likely to succeed based on the discussions that you have with the leaders, with the capitals? And this question also for President Michel, more specifically on the issue of joint borrowing that you mentioned in your report, the Euro bonds for defense. Also, based on the contacts that you had during these strategic discussions in the dinners, how broad or thin would you say that is the support for this idea? Do you think that the countries again seems to be smaller than in the COVID times could be convinced? And if this idea will be more mature around July, or do you think that it will be rather in autumn, depending on what happens in the US elections? Thank you.
Bon, I think on the topic, of course, having many meetings around Europe, I had the possibility to hear proposals. I was in Estonia. I met Kaja Kallas, Prime Minister Kallas. I heard her proposal. I think her proposal is a very good one. I had the possibility to talk with the Commission. I know Commissioner Breton had a proposal on that. I like these two proposals, for instance. But, of course, it is not my topic to, in the Council of tomorrow or the next Council, because it will be the necessity to find agreements. My general point on that, it is we need on defense to scale on the industrial side. There's a big topic, scale on the industrial side, and we need to finance the needs. If we are not able to scale, we'll continue with this shame of the 80%, or if I am more precise, 78% of non-European military furniture that we bought as Europeans with money of the European taxpayers because of the level of fragmentation of our defense industry. And I think this is something that we have to overcome, and we need to overcome.
First point in preparation of this strategic agenda, I feel a growing consensus on two principles. The first one, we need to improve our competitiveness, and that's why this debate is so important, because this is key. This is the source for financing what are our priorities in the future, point one. And point two, I feel another growing interest in defense and security for obvious reasons. And these are two pillars for building a European strategic autonomy, more sovereignty, more influence, being more resilient, being better prepared for addressing the challenge of the future. But of course, this is an important question. How do we pay for that? And what is our level of ambition? And both answers are supposed to go together. And here I see three political debates. The first one is capital markets union, savings and investment. How can we channel the savings to make sure that it will support the real economy in line with our strategic priorities, competitiveness, climate change, digital revolution, security, defense, point one. I think this is a very powerful tool. This is the way to mobilize the private sector. And I feel and I think it will be possible to make decisions. There are some difficulties, some challenges regarding the corporate taxation, regarding the supervision, etc. But we must be able to overcome those obstacles. Point two, there are proposals, this is absolutely correct, to use the so-called Eurobonds, or at least to invest together and to borrow together. But on this topic, as we speak, we do not have a consensus. This is an ongoing debate. This is not the end of the debate. There are good arguments on both sides, and we continue to work on those topics, on those questions. And my third point, I would like to insist, I'm very convinced that the European Investment Bank has a major role to play, because the European Investment Bank is the bank of the member states. The member states are the shareholders of this multilateral development bank, and I'm also convinced this is a a way to show our solidarity if we would decide one day, sooner or later it will be a debate, I think, to increase the capital, and this is consistent if we want to give more tasks to the European Investment Bank and to make sure that this bank could keep the rating, which is very important to have a powerful effect in terms of leverage for mobilizing more private money to address the strategic challenges.
Diego, then Mark.
Thanks, Diego Velázquez with the Luxembourg Wort. One question for Mr. Letta and one for Mr. Michel. Vous avez parlé d'arbitrage. Well, one of the made in your report is that you see the necessity for strengthening the supervision powers of the ESMA. You know that this is a very difficult debate within the European Union, that you have on the one hand home countries who are much favorite, while on the other one you have host countries who are very skeptical about it. What would you tell host countries to make the idea more attractive, knowing that it's very controversial and it has been controversial for ages? And yeah, Monsieur Michel, vous allez adresser cette...
Mr. Michel, I know you're going to deal with this issue in the Council tomorrow. You have about half of the EU countries against the draft conclusions that you submitted, which go in the direction of what Mr. Letta says in his report. So what do you think might be a possible compromise, and how are you going to deal with that discussion? A discussion that has been going on for some 10 years already. One other question for Mr. Letta, if I may. Your report doesn't talk much about corporate taxation. Are you giving up on the idea of some sort of tax harmonization and the benefits of that for the single market? Mr. Letta, there's a debate on this question on your second point very quickly, and I can see that there are difficulties. My report, as you know, is one which tries to reflect the situation as it is. Everything I put in it is therefore feasible, while at the same time being ambitious. I haven't included major changes to the treaty in my report, because I know that is not going to happen. Coming back now to your first question, we'll be talking about this tomorrow, and it's not my responsibility in the context of the European Council, but I think the key point is that in the report, I only talk about the Savings and Investment Union, not the CMU. I'm talking about the possibility, which is reflected in the report, to try to make sure that the integration of the European financial markets is something which is useful for one of the most important challenges facing the European Union, i.e. how do they finance the transition. So we wanted to tie it into that and not start talking about finance for finance's sake. From my point of view, I think that's a key point. On the ESMA point that you refer to, if you look in the report, I'm not creating that we have a single European institution which would eliminate all the 27 member state agencies. I'm talking about what would work best. If you look at the bank situation at the moment, the European Central Bank and national central banks, it's a system which works. The central national banks exist and the tasks are shared out. That sharing out of tasks also needs to be brought into the financial market side of things, which is not the case at the moment because everything is only done at the national level at the moment. So briefly, that's what I'm saying, is that we can do something which is feasible. It's not either or. It's not one group against the other. It's just a question of trying to move forward and make some headway. But I'll leave it at that because I don't want to get involved in tomorrow's debate.
Expliquer ce qui est en jeu, parce que vous.
Well, you just how does this work? You talk about the different countries, the ones for, the ones against, but what is actually at stake here? The main point is that there's a lack of integration in the financial markets. And what does that mean for the European Union and for our economic model and well-being? Well, we can all come up with examples. I can too, of extremely promising European companies with a huge growth potential based in Europe, but they're held back because of the massive difficulty of accessing the amount of capital that they need to grow. So quite often these companies end up being bought by Chinese, American, other foreign companies that basically take over the potential. And as has been said in the figures given by Mr. Letta, with European money. They're buying it with European money, but it comes from outside of the EU. So that's the starting point. We're turning things on their head. We can't carry on in this way. And that's just why I think this is a moment of truth in the European Council. I expect it to be difficult. I expect it to be complex. It's a discussion that takes place in the ministries of finance, but what we need to do now is channel it forward to make headway and have more integration in the financial markets. And I agree with what is said in Enrico Letta's report. It's very much in line with the proposal that I have tabled and which is up for discussion. It's not at all a question of getting rid of national regulators. No, it's a question of having a more consistent approach for have proper integration of the financial markets. That's what we're talking about. And the very good suggestion that has been made, and which is what we've included in, partially at least in the conclusions that we did between the different regulatory bodies, which we could draw on what's been done in the past in European law. There are billions, if not trillions worth of savings for European citizens. How can we make sure that this can be used to the benefit of those who do save, but also to support economic growth on the basis of a clear strategy to promote the green transition, the digital transition, security, defense, to make Europe more to make it stronger and more secure. And we can't avoid that debate. We're going to have to look each other in the eye and see what we can do to move forward. It's not going to be easy, but I count on the European spirit and entrepreneurial and innovative spirit so that we can hopefully have this debate and come forward with ambitious proposals in this field. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark Peperkorn, Volkskrant, Netherlands. Mr. Letta, congratulations with your report. I didn't read it all. I read the political summary, to be honest, but I mean, it looks very good, detailed. But there have been many reports about the internal market. Your fellow countryman, Mr. Monti, wrote two, one in 2010 and in 2016. All the topics, the difficult topics you mentioned, are discussed here already for 5, 10, sometimes even 20 years. So my question is to you is, why do you think the heads of state this time will act? Because it's a matter of political will. My question for the council president is, what if they don't take this opportunity? Will we have then Mr. Letta Jr. in 10-year time, another Italian who writes another beautiful report? Thanks.
Je trouve très bon.
I think you make a very good point. I've always said that the biggest enemy of my report is likely to be the shelf or a desk drawer. And the worst thing that could happen to it would for it to be finished, for it to finish up in a drawer somewhere. But my reply is very simple. The décrochage that we're seeing at the moment is so significant that we cannot afford to wait. We are being left behind compared to the US, but also compared to the other large economies across the globe. And this is a last opportunity, a last window of opportunity, and we need to seize this opportunity. The report does not escape the link between the necessity of acting now and the fragmentation that we have to overcome to the benefit of all. So I think now is the moment to act, because given all the crises that we've experienced over the last few years, the years of crises, our economy is being left behind compared to the US. And if we look at, China and India and say, yes, they're bigger economies, so it's natural for them to be doing better. Well, the US is not. The US is not bigger in economic terms than us. We're the same size. And if they're doing better than we are, then we're doing something wrong. There's a problem, and we need to address it. The title, Much More Than a Market, Speed, Security, Solidarity, is the title I chose, and I want to go beyond, to go further, to catch up, overcome this décrochage. And with all the people I've spoken to, I heard nothing different. I heard great concern and awareness of the issue with everyone I spoke to. Yes, well, in politics, it's important to be right, but it's also important to be right at the right moment. And I think that the right moment is now. There's clearly a convergence among the political analyses that are being carried out at the highest level among the 27. And I can say this because over the last few weeks, I've spent a lot of time talking directly to each and every head of state and government, and I see that there is an awareness and that there is also political determination to move forward. 2 points that I'd like to highlight. When the single market was launched by Jacques Delors just over 30 years ago, or was it more than that? Almost 40 years, actually. When this single market was created, was launched, it was a completely different economic situation across the world. The emerging economies played a very minor role globally in economic terms, and the situation we were in was quite remarkable. And now the situation has changed. The distribution is very different. And let's just look at patents as an example, looking at intellectual property. If I look at the figures in Europe, compare them to the US and China, we clearly have a problem in Europe. And that shows that if we don't invest, if we don't innovate, we risk our ability to develop our single market, which in turn ensures our democracies and our way of life. So we are aware of this, and I think this is the right moment. A European Council is taking place now, just a few weeks ahead of an institutional renewal. And this is going to have to be an anchor point for the next legislative period, the next Commission, the next European Parliament, and hopefully the incoming Commission and Parliament will be ambitious.
Sorry, I'll just take the first that raised the question. So you're active, and then next you're active. And one question per journalist, please.
Hello, Thomas Miller-Nielsen at Euractiv. I've got two questions for Mr. Letta, although President Michel, if you could comment, that would also be great. So one thing that struck me about the report, or at least the introduction to the report, is you say that Europe cannot and must not cede its role as a manufacturing leader to other countries, in particular China and the United States. Now, obviously, there's been a lot of discussion recently about Europe's industrial decline and potential deindustrialization. Many people, including the former head of the BASF, Martin Brudermüller, but also Christine Lagarde, have said, look, since Russia's invasion, energy prices in Europe are just going to be structurally higher, and therefore Europe's industry, or as a share of Europe's GDP, is just going to inevitably decline. So I wanted to know what you make of that argument, first and foremost. And second of all, a question just so I understand your position a little bit better. So you talk a lot about the need to reduce companies' administrative burden, cutting regulatory barriers. You talk about the need to avoid over-regulation. But one thing I'm not totally clear on is your views on industrial policy. And so just now you said Europe has to develop a toolbox to counteract the Inflation Reduction Act in America. You also say, I think in the introduction.
Thomas, let's make it shorter.
Sorry. It has to be. Europe has to have a competitive industrial strategy. Are you basically calling for a European version of the IRA? And what do you think of Prime Minister De Croo's call for an industrial deal on a par with the Green Deal? Is that something that you support? So is your view that to arrest Europe's industrial decline, you need integrate the single market plus industrial policy, or do you think just integrating the single market is sufficient? Thank you.
So no more 10 questions in one, please. The colleague next to you. And we go to Ansa. I've seen you.
Hi, Janusz Allen-Bachelman from Table Media. My question is, you say that you have some focus on European champions. I don't think you actually name them European champions, but you say the telecom market, they have to integrate more, they have to become bigger. But I'm not quite sure if we want something like the US, where you have 3 telecom providers and people actually hate them. Is it, and I think more generally is a problem if we also are getting a little more protectionist and everything, while also allowing for bigger and bigger companies inside the market, that we will actually destroy competition. How do you want to, deal with this challenge?
Thank you.
First answer is about the industrial policy. My answer is very simple. I pledge for the integration of the single market plus European industrial policy. This is the key point. And the European industrial policy is not the sum of 27 national industrial policies, because we need to have a scale system, and the link with finance, energy and telecom is very strong on that point of the European industrial policy. That is, in my view, very important. And on the comparison with IRA, I say that the link with the savings at financial market level is, for me, one of the key, the game changer that we can put on the table. And on the telecom side, I'm not saying that we have to become like the US. My report is not the report to say the US is the model, we have to become the US. It's not that. We have to be the European Union. But we have to be really the European Union. Because today we are not the European Union in many important sectors, where we are 27 countries, not the European Union. Telecom sector is one of them. When we have 27 systems, and in reality, if I may say, in medio stat virtus, as we say, between 100 European operators, 103, I think we can find a good compromise with a good satisfaction for the consumer, but at the same time with not this industrial disaster that is the system of telecom in Europe. In the 90s, in the 80s, the technological revolution on telecom was under European leadership. And it was also because of dimension at that time and innovation. And today we are not in this situation. And today we are in a scenario where we are lagging behind and we are not we are marginalized on that. So this is why I think we can have both. In my view, it is possible to have it.
D'un mot, je vois 3 points clés pour la stratégie.
I think there are key points for the strategy in the European Union. As I said before, we need investments, and I'm personally, as I said a few days ago, convinced that the CMU is the best European IRA you could possibly develop. We'd be talking about trillions of euros in resources which could be marshaled and used to stimulate, support, develop innovation and investment, which is not being done today. Secondly, industrial development is very much tied in with energy-related questions, and there we have a clear problem. You probably remember that a little while ago we had a quite lively debate in Council, but also between Council and Commission on the electricity market and pricing reforms. Because although a lot of progress has been made, we brought prices back down to the level that they were prior to the Russian war of aggression against Ukraine. But the fact is that electricity bills for consumers and businesses are 2, 3, 5, 6 times more than the prices being paid by Chinese and US companies. And that's a real problem for our companies because they need that energy. That's a key issue. What we really need to have is a proper energy union. And for that, we need more in forms of renewable energy, more investment to guarantee our energy sovereignty, but more partnerships linking the North and the South. And finally, there's a question of the red tape, administrative burden.
And when we are adding a lot of rules, principles, reportings, monitoring, etc. And in fact, in a nutshell, I think what we lose, this is when we don't trust the businesses. I think we should base our approach in terms of regulation on a principle of trust and confidence, and not the opposite. And sometimes I have the impression that the starting point is a principle of mistrust, a lack of confidence, and this has an effect because of that. I think that the regulation is asking too much without respecting the principle of proportionality, in my opinion.
Okay, we take the last round, very short, one question per leader, Ansa and then Jano, and we can continue tomorrow at the conference.
Thank you, Sabina Rossetta Ansa. In the conclusion of the report, you mentioned the upcoming European elections, and you write they will not only guide the strategic direction, but also shape the recommendation detailed in the report. I just wonder, we all have seen the polls. Which is the message that you think that this report can give to voters? Thank you.
Thank you, Sabina. Jano. Mr. Letta, if you I would just maybe take the last question and like this we'll wrap it up.
Yes. Jarno Hartikainen, Helsingin Sanomat. Question to Mr. Letta. I would be eager to hear your opinion on the current state aid regime in the European Union, which gives broad freedoms to the member states to support their companies. Your opinion and your preferred solution to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Letta.
Yeah, on this final point, you'll find an entire chapter on that in the report, and your curiosity will be satisfied because I take a very clear position there. On the European elections, my point is the title of the chapter of the report, A Single Market for All. This is, for me, the mantra of this report in this particular moment. The single market has to talk with all European citizens. The single market, too many times, is perceived as an opportunity by those citizens who are able to speak 3 languages, happy because they move from one country to another. And in reality, the same for enterprises. You mentioned SMEs. It is exactly the same point. SMEs are not exploiting and taking advantage enough of the single market because they are small. And the dimension of a fragmented single market is something that is a good advantage for those who are big. So my point is this report try to propose a single market talking, speaking to all. But you know, in the report there are many proposals on that the discussion about the freedom to move and the freedom to stay is part of this discussion, and I am very much interested to follow the way in which the debate in the electoral campaign will continue, because I think this electoral campaign will be very important for, I put the electoral campaign and the elections in my conclusions because I'm a true Democrat, if I may say, and I think people will vote and people will